a dinner club, a knife, an eyeball hanging from its socket. By nothing, just human. Picture this room. White tablecloths everywhere, silverware catching candlelight, women in pearls, men in sharp suits, jazz playing soft. The kind of jazz that tells you everything. This is an elegant place, a beautiful place, a safe place. People laughing low, glasses touching gently, forks against fine china. This room had no violence. Not tonight, not here, not in a place like this. Tissue, one thin thread. The question isn't who. The question is, what did Ulysses Rollins do? What on earth did he do? Then the knife appeared. Two men, one floor, one white tablecloth, so completely red. And then, the eye, his eye, destroyed, hanging. Every fork stopped moving. Every glass stayed still. Every person stopped breathing. Completely. The attacker stood up, slowly, calmly. He straightened his tie, did not run, did not panic, stepped over Rollins' body, like stepping over a puddle. Sunday morning casual, picked up the menu, said one sentence, completely calm. I could go for spaghetti and meatballs. Here is what nobody tells you. The man on that floor, he had survived before. 36 stab wounds. 36. And even after the eye, he was not finished. Before this video ends, you will find out what happened the last time. The last time Ulysses Rollins tried to finish this. I promise you, you will not see it coming. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? And tell me honestly, had you ever heard the name Ulysses Rollins? Because history buried this man, buried this whole story. If forgotten history matters to you, hit that like button. Not for the channel, for Harlem, for the people history chose to erase. Subscribe right now. Every week we bring them back. The stories nobody kept. Stay right here, because this one gets so much worse. Before you judge Ulysses Rollins, and you will judge him, I want you to ask just one question. What kind of man survives 36 stab wounds and still refuses to leave? Is that bravery? Is that madness? Or did the city build men like him on purpose? Hold that question, because the answer matters. It matters more than you know. Harlem, 1940s. Understand something first. This was not a neighborhood. This was a city inside a city, built by people who had no other choice. The Great Migration happened. Hundreds of thousands came north, came from Georgia, from Mississippi, from Alabama, came looking for something better, and found Harlem. But here is the truth. The legitimate economy had a sign on the door. It said, not you, not your kind, not here. Banks wouldn't lend. Employers wouldn't hire. The front door was locked. So Harlem built a back door. And through that back door flowed everything. The numbers racket, the dice games, the clubs that never closed. An entire underground economy, built from necessity, not from greed, from survival. You understand the difference. Those two things are different, completely different. And inside that world, men built reputations. Real ones, earned ones, not given, taken. Ulysses Rollins was one of those men. He was not a nobody. Let that land properly. He was not some stranger who wandered into the wrong street. He had standing in Harlem, real standing, his own connections, his own reputation, his own name, a name that meant something, in rooms that mattered. And that is what makes this story so much more than a crime story. This is not about a weak man making a foolish mistake. This is about a capable man, a man with real presence, who let one thing destroy him. One thing, his pride. Here's where it starts. The first confrontation, before the dinner club, before the candlelight, before the spaghetti. There was a first encounter, and that encounter produced a number, 36. 36 stab wounds. Count that, slowly. 1, 2, 3, keep going. Most human beings do not survive one. A single stab wound can end everything. 1, And Rollins absorbed 36. 36 times. That blade found his body. 36 times. He should have died. The math says he died. The human body has limits. There's only so much blood, only so much tissue, only so much a man can lose, and still come back. Rollins exceeded all of it. The doctors in that Harlem hospital could not fully explain it. His physical conditioning, maybe his refusal to surrender, maybe something else entirely. Nobody knows. What we know is this. He opened his eyes, and Harlem was still there. But here is the question, the real question, the one this number demands. What kind of message? Requires 36 stab wounds? Think about that carefully. That was not a fight. A fight ends at 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. 36 is not a fight. 36 is a sentence, written in blood, on a man's body, a communication, delivered with absolute clarity. And Rollins received that message, every single word of it. He felt every single word, 36 times over. So what did he do? After surviving the impossible, after the hospital, after the recovery, after the doctors shook their heads, what did Ulysses Rollins do? He did not leave Harlem. He stayed. Same streets, same world, same neighborhood that had already tried to kill him 36 times. He unpacked his things, and he stayed. Now I want you to sit with that decision for a moment, not judge it yet. Just sit with it, because here is what I know about men who make that choice. It is never simple. It is never stupid. There is always a reason deep enough that survival itself cannot override it. What was Rollins protecting? What was worth more than his own life? Was it his name, his territory, his standing in those rooms, or something older, something the city had put inside him long before this started? I am not going to answer that yet. You need to earn that answer, same way Rollins earned it, the hard way. What I will tell you is this: that decision, the one he made, staying in those streets, staying in that world, sealed everything that followed, every single thing, because the next collision did not happen in a street, not in an alley, not somewhere dark and hidden. It happened somewhere beautiful, a dinner club, candlelight, jazz playing soft, white tablecloths, and a plate of spaghetti. That became the most chilling detail in this entire story. Stay right here, because we are just getting started. And if you know someone who has ever refused to walk away, when everyone told them to, send them this video right now, because the people in this story were real. Their choices were real. Their pain was real, and their stories deserve more than silence. Of all the places this could happen, a dark alley, a midnight street corner, the back of a moving car. It happened in a dinner club, jazz playing softly, white tablecloths everywhere. The smell of good food, which means what you are about to hear, was not just violence. It was a performance. And every performance needs an audience. Picture this room first. Take your time with it, because the room matters. Candles on every table, small flames, warm light, the kind of light that makes everyone look beautiful, makes everyone feel safe. White tablecloths pressed perfectly flat, silverware polished to a shine, glasses catching the candlelight, throwing it back gently. The jazz was soft, not loud, not demanding, just present, filling every corner quietly. The kind of music that sits underneath conversation, underneath laughter, underneath the sound of a city that feels very far away tonight. Women in pearls, men in sharp pressed suits, food coming out of the kitchen, the smell of it drifting through, warm bread, slow-cooked meat, something sweet from the back. This was a good place, an elegant place, a place where the ugliness outside could not follow you in, or so people believed. Rollins was there, seated, inside that warmth, inside that elegance, in plain sight, not hiding, not afraid, just there, living out loud, in a world that had already tried to end him. And here's what I want you to notice. A man who has survived 36 stab wounds watches a room differently. His eyes never fully rest. They move, slowly, constantly, cataloging every entrance, every exit, every face that does not belong. That is not paranoia. That is education, paid for in blood. So Rollins sat there, watching the room, the way only he knew how. And the room gave him nothing. Just candlelight, just jazz, just an ordinary beautiful evening. Until it didn't. Here is the moment. I need you to feel this. Do not let it pass quickly. Somewhere across that room, a pair of eyes found him. No announcement, no warning given, no words exchanged. Just that look, that ancient terrible recognition between two men in a world like this one, where that kind of look only ever ends one way. The air in that room changed. Before anything happened, before a single move was made, the air changed. The people near them felt it, could not explain it, but felt it the way you feel a storm. Before the sky breaks open, then the knife appeared. I am not going to rush this, because the truth of what happened deserves to be told carefully. Rollins' face was cut, badly. His body was opened. The music in that room stopped, not because someone told it to. It just stopped, the way everything stops when the human brain cannot process what the eyes are seeing. Every fork went still. Every glass stayed on the table. Every person in that dinner club became a witness to something they would spend years try and forget. And then, the eye, this is the part that people who know this story cannot move past easily. His eye, the ligaments, the socket, that one thin thread of tissue holding everything together by almost nothing. The precision of that damage, the specific, unbearable reality of it, the power of this moment is not in dwelling on it. It is in understanding what it takes to look at that and not run, not scream, not panic, because the attacker did none of those things. He stood up, slowly, no urgency, no rush. He straightened his tie, that detail, that single small detail, straightening his tie, after what had just happened, says everything. Everything. He did not look around the room, did not check who was watching, did not scan for exits. He stepped over Rollins' body, the way a man steps over a puddle. Mild inconvenience, complete indifference. He picked up a menu, looked at it, and said, with total, absolute calm, that he had a craving for spaghetti and meatballs. Let that land. Really let it land. Because here is what I need you to understand. That level of calm, after that level of violence, is not a normal human response. It is a statement, a message delivered, more clearly than any threat, more permanently than any warning. Anger would have been easier. Anger means you were affected. Anger means the other person still had enough power to move something inside you. This was not anger. This was contempt. Cold, complete, total. It said one thing, without a single word. You are so far beneath me that what I just did not even register as significant in Harlem in the 1940s. Contempt was the most devastating verdict. One man could pass on another. It did not just end a fight. It erased a man standing, his name, his presence in every room he would ever walk into again. That spaghetti order was not hunger. It was a verdict delivered publicly, with witnesses, with candlelight, with jazz playing softly, in the most elegant room Rollins had ever sat in. Now, everyone who hears this story stops here. They close it. They assume a man, with one eye and a body full of scars, had finally learned his lesson. They are wrong. What Rollins did next was so unexpected, so reckless, so breathtakingly foolish, that it became the thing that truly finished him. And it had nothing to do with a knife. Rollins lost his eye. He lost the fight. He lost everything. The city had decided he was allowed to have, but he still had one thing left, a gun, and he was about to use it in the worst possible way, in the worst possible place, at the worst possible moment. Do not touch that screen. Right now, pause this. Turn to whoever is nearest to you. Ask them one question. What would you have done? After losing an eye in a dinner club? Then come back. Find out what Rollins actually did. And subscribe right now. We have never had a single viewer, not one, predict the ending of this story. There's a version of this story where Ulysses Rollins is the hero, the man who survived everything, the man who refused to break, the man who stood back up. Every single time the city knocked him down, that version of the story ends right here. Because what Rollins did next did not just end his story, it ended someone else's. Someone who had absolutely nothing to do with any of this. Hold that, we will come back to it. After the dinner club, after the eye, after all of it, Rollins had a choice. Everyone in this situation has a choice. Leave or stay. Recover or retaliate. Walk away or pick up a weapon. Here's the choice he made. He obtained a gun, and he went looking for the man who took his eye. Now I need you to understand something. Before we go further, a man thinking clearly does not make this choice. A man thinking clearly counts what he has left. One eye, a body full of damage, a city that has already spoken, loudly, clearly, 36 times over. A man thinking clearly hears all of that and walks in the opposite direction. Rollins was not thinking clearly. He was thinking in one direction only, forward, straight forward, into the fire, and the place he chose to settle this score tells you everything about the state of his mind. 125th Street, Frank's Restaurant. If you know Harlem, you know what 125th Street meant. This was not a back alley, not a dark corner, not somewhere hidden. 125th Street was the main artery, the heartbeat of Harlem itself. Frank's Restaurant was one of the most well-known establishments on that strip, a place where people gathered, where life was loud and warm, where the neighborhood breathed in and breathed out every single day. Rollins walked in there with a gun in broad sight in front of witnesses on the most visible street in all of Harlem. Ask yourself what that tells you about where his mind was. He saw the man. He raised a weapon. He fired one shot. And I need you to sit in that silence for a moment. One shot. The bullet did not find the man it was meant for. One shot. One miss. That silence I am asking you to sit in is about to be broken by the worst sentence in this entire story. There was a woman nearby in Frank's Restaurant on 125th Street in Harlem on an ordinary day. She had no part in this war, no knowledge of Ulysses Rollins, no understanding of why a one-eyed man with a gun had just walked through that door. She was someone's daughter. Let that be enough. Someone's daughter who woke up that morning in Harlem with no idea that a stranger's pride would be the last thing to ever touch her life. She did not choose this. She did not earn this. She was simply there, in the wrong room, at the worst possible moment, because a man she had never met could not let go. Take 30 seconds with that. Just 30 seconds. Because she deserves at least that much. From every person watching this. Now here's the question. The one this story demands. At what point does a man's refusal to accept defeat stop being admirable and start being catastrophically dangerous? Where's that line? Because Rollins crossed it. He crossed it the day he got that gun. He crossed it walking through Frank's Restaurant door. And an innocent woman paid the price for a war that was never hers. That is not a footnote. That is the weight this story now carries, all the way to its end. And here is where the machinery arrives. The machinery that had rarely bothered with the violence of these Harlem streets. Before tonight, an off-duty police officer was in Frank's Restaurant. That day, present, watching, armed. In a single moment, it was over, not by a rival's hand, not by a blade in an alley, by a badge and a pair of handcuffs. Rollins was arrested on the spot, right there on 125th Street, in front of the neighborhood that had watched him survive everything, now watching him be led away. in handcuffs, and somewhere in that city, the man Rollins had tried to shoot was still straightening his tie, still finishing his dinner, still completely unbothered. This is where this comment section is going to divide, and I want it to because this is the gray area. That history books skip over. Was Rollins a victim of the city that built him, or did he become the villain of his own story? Drop your answer below. Right now, I want to read every single one and share this video, because this is the kind of conversation that deserves to happen in more than one room. Rollins was in handcuffs. The woman was gone. Harlem was watching. The question now was not whether Rollins would survive. The question was whether anyone would even remember him when it was all over. The answer to that question is sadder than you are expecting. Stay right here. You came into this video expecting Ulysses Rollins to die. You expected a tragic ending in an alley, a prison cell, or the floor of another dinner club in another part of this city. You were wrong. What actually happened to Rollins is quieter than that, and somehow so much worse. Hold that thought, because we need to open something first. Think about the men from this world, the men who came before Rollins, and the men who came after. Some of them died violently, and Harlem mourned them loudly. Sharp suits at the funeral, stories passed down for generations, names that survived long after the men themselves were gone. That is one kind of ending, loud, witness, remembered. Then there is the other kind, the quiet erasure, the kind where a man simply stops existing in the memory of a neighborhood, as completely as if he had never walked those streets at all. Which ending do you think Ulysses Rollins got? After Frank's restaurant, after the handcuffs, after the woman who did not go home, Rollins was pulled into machinery, the attempted shooting, the death, the public location, 125th Street, in front of witnesses, in front of Harlem itself. There was no version of this story where he walked back to his old life, not one, the world he had lived in, with all its violence, all its rules, all its strange, brutal order, had a code, and one of those codes was this: you do not bring your war into rooms full of innocent people. You do not let your pride pull an uninvolved woman into the crossfire of your anger. That world had no place for a man who had done what he did. Not anymore. So here's what happened next, and I need you to feel the full weight of this. After that day at Frank's restaurant, Ulysses Rollins was never seen in Harlem again, not in a hospital bed, being visited by men from the street, not mourned at a funeral where people came to pay respects, not spoken about in the oral history of the neighborhood the way some men from this world eventually were. He was just gone, erased as completely as if he had never been there. And here's the question that this ending demands: which is worse, dying in a way the street remembers, or disappearing in a way the street refuses to? Because Harlem remembered everything. Harlem kept the stories of the men it respected, even the ones who fell violently, even the ones the law buried. Harlem found a way to say their names. It did not say Rollins' name. That silence is not an accident. That silence is a verdict. The same neighborhood that had watched him survive 36 stab wounds, the same streets that had known his standing, his reputation, his name. Those streets went quiet when his name came up, not out of fear, out of something harder to carry: disappointment. Because Rollins had been something. Before the end, he had been proof that this city could produce men who refused to be broken, men who absorbed the impossible and stood back up anyway. That is a rare thing in any city, in any era, in any world. But survival without wisdom is just delayed destruction. And Rollins survived everything except his own choices. The eye he could not give back, the 36 wounds he could not unfeel, but the gun, the restaurant, the woman who never went home, those were his, completely his. And that is the thing about this story. that I have been carrying since the very beginning. Ulysses Rollins is not simple. He is not a villain you can dismiss. He is not a hero you can celebrate cleanly. He is something harder than both. He is a man, built by a world that gave him almost no choices, who used the few choices he had in the worst possible way. And somewhere in that is a question that is bigger than Harlem, bigger than the 1940s, bigger than this story. How much of what a man becomes is the city's fault, and how much is his own? I am not going to answer that, because I do not think there's a clean answer. I think the honest answer lies somewhere between the two, in the gray space that most people are too uncomfortable to stand in. But I want you to stand in it just for a moment, because the woman at Frank's restaurant deserves that. She deserves more than a footnote, more than a detail, more than a sentence in someone else's story. She deserves to be the reason that this question stays with you long after this video ends. Rollins disappeared. The city moved forward. Harlem kept breathing, kept building, kept protecting its own. And the man in the dinner club who straightened his tie, who ordered spaghetti and meatballs, who stepped over a body like stepping over a puddle, he is not the point of this story. He never was. The point is Rollins, the man who survived the impossible and could not survive himself. That is the story. That is the whole story. Now drop a comment. Right now, tell me where you are watching from. And tell me honestly, before today, had you ever heard this name? Ulysses Rollins. Because if you had not, that is the problem. That is exactly the problem. These stories exist. Real people, real streets, real consequences, real women who never went home. And history decided they were not worth keeping. We disagree. Subscribe right now, because every single week, we pull another name out of the silence and we say it out loud, the way it always deserved to be said. Share this video with someone tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight, because forgotten history does not stay forgotten. Not here, not on this channel, not while there are people still willing to listen. Now here is something that most people miss about what happened to Rollins. They assumed the worst thing was the arrest, the handcuffs, the machinery of the law. They are wrong. In 1940s Harlem, being removed from the story was not a neutral outcome. It was a verdict, and that verdict was not delivered in a courtroom. No judge, no gavel, no formal sentence read aloud. It was delivered by silence, the silence of people who had known your name and stopped saying it, the way you stopped talking about whether that is past and will not return. No funeral where men came in sharp suits to pay their respects. No story passed down to the next generation. No corner of Harlem that kept his memory warm. Just absence, complete and total absence. And in the culture of that world, in the code of those streets, that silence said everything. It said, you do not matter enough to be remembered. That is the most devastating thing one community can do to one of its own. Not bury you. Move on, like you were never there. Now I need you to stay with me for the most important thing I am going to say in this entire story. Because here is what I know. After everything, after all of it, a blade did not finish Rollins. 36 stab wounds did not finish him. Losing as I did not finish him. What finished Ulysses Rollins was something he carried himself into every room, every street, every confrontation. From the very beginning, his own pride, the pride that kept him in Harlem when every rational bone should have said leave, the pride that put a gun in his hand on 125th Street, the pride that made a one-eyed man believe he could still win a war he had already lost 3 times over. Nobody gave him that pride. Nobody forced it on him. It was his completely, and it destroyed him more completely than any enemy ever could. But here is where I stop and ask you something honest. Was Rollins simply a fool? A man who could not accept defeat? Or was he something more complicated than that? Think about the world he was born into. 1940s America, a country that had built entire systems to ensure that black men had no legitimate path to dignity, no legitimate avenue to power, no legitimate way to be a man of standing in the rooms that mattered. And so pride, even destructive pride, even pride that burned everything down, was sometimes the only currency a man like Rollins had, the only thing that nobody could legislate away, the only thing nobody could legally take until the very end. I am not going to resolve that for you, because the best stories do not give you clean answers. They give you better questions. And that is the question this story leaves in your hands. Now I want to take you back, one final time, to exactly where we started. A dinner club, Harlem, 1940s. Candles on every table. White tablecloths, pressed perfectly flat. Jazz playing soft. The smell of good food. Quiet laughter. The city outside. Feeling very far away. You know this room now. You know what it felt like before everything changed. Now watch this moment again. Knowing everything you know, a man stands up, slowly. No urgency. No fear. He straightens his tie. That single small movement that says more than any weapon ever could. He steps over a body, like stepping over a puddle. Mild inconvenience. Complete indifference. He picks up a menu and orders spaghetti and meatballs. The first time you heard that detail, it shocked you. It was supposed to. But now, knowing everything, it does not just shock you. It settles into you like something cold. Because now you understand what that order spaghetti meant. It was not hunger. It was a final verdict, delivered without a single word. You are so beneath me that what I just did not interrupt my appetite. That is not violence. Violence can be survived. That is indifference. And indifference is the one thing that a proud man cannot recover from. The most terrifying thing your enemy can do is not attack you. It is to simply not care about you at all. That is what destroyed Ulysses Rollins. Not a knife, not a bullet, not a pair of handcuffs. One man's complete, absolute contempt. Harlem did not bury Ulysses Rollins. Harlem did something far more permanent. Harlem moved on, like he had never been there at all. And somewhere across the city, a man finished his spaghetti, asked for the bill, straightened his tie one last time, and stepped out into the Harlem night, unbothered, untouched, and still completely and terrifyingly in charge. You just watched a story most history books will never tell you. A story about pride, about survival, about the catastrophic cost of not knowing when to stop. If this video made you feel something, hit that like button right now, not for the numbers, for Ulysses Rollins, who deserves to be more than a footnote that nobody reads. Subscribe, because every single week we bring back the people that history tried to forget, and they deserve better than to be forgotten. Share this with one person today, just one, because the best way to honor a story is to pass it on. And before you go, leave one comment, just one. Was Rollins brave, or was he a fool who never learned? We read every single one. Harlem remembers, even when history doesn't.